All right, we're actually going to watch SCL live. There's 10 seconds to go. He's going to say hi, everybody, in a few minutes. This is Cargo and Hangar Q&A in September 13th, 2024. Like, I don't understand what this is going to be even. So, yeah. I don't know. We'll see.
Yep, take it in.
Oh, he shaved. Well, I think I saw this somewhere else.
Hi, everybody. That's enough of that. Welcome to Star Citizen Live Cargo and Hangars. I'm your host. Almost forgot the word host. Jared Huckabee. If you've never seen the Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour at the end of our week, invite one of our developers on the show, and chat about all kinds of stuff Star Citizen. Today's show is focused entirely on cargo and hangars, and any conversation related to cargo and hangars must involve Cargo Chad himself,
Yes.
Mr. Chad McKinney. Chad, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Now, I thought we had agreed to both shave our beards for this.
We both agreed that you would shave your beard.
Is that what we agreed to?
That's what I remember.
I should read my messages.
How's volume? I think it needs to go up a bit.
No, as I can already see in the chat, no, I did not lose a bet or anything like this. The answer is I'm getting...
You lost a fight with a razor.
I lost a fight with a razor. Against my better wishes and against my protestations on this very show for years and years and years, I am getting scanned for inclusion in one of the games next week. So that's what this is for. I've seen people wondering if it was for CitizenCon or for some big marketing thing.
I was about to pause it.
It's just because they're
For
like,
one
hey,
of the games.
we're gonna put you in the game. We're probably gonna make you a janitor or something on the Bengals.
Deserved.
I'm like, cool. I'll be a janitor on the Bengals. That's what this is for. So, sorry, women and children, for the fright. This is what I actually look like.
Deserved. Whatever it is, deserved. So.
All right. So getting on with the show, this is a Q&A show where we collect questions from you, the Star Citizen viewer,
and been in the game a
pose them
long
directly
time
to
ago.
Chad. We put up a thread up on Spectrum, which is our bespoke communication platform available on robertspaceindustries.com. If you haven't checked that out, check that out. It's your chance to submit questions and vote on which ones you want to see answered most. We selected the questions that were appropriate for Chad. Remember that no Star Citizen developer works on every single aspect of the game. So while there were many questions that I know folks were fervently wanting answered, we do have to find questions that are appropriate for our guests. That said, we did pick 4 or 5 that were still outside his mandate and went to Ian Leyland and Rick Porter to get some answers to those. So we did try to include some of those questions that we normally skip over for that. So we're trying to best of both worlds here. So Chad, are you ready?
No, but let's go.
All right. So the first question
good.
is a real easy one. Just a softball over the home plate.
It's not going to be.
In the Hangars and Cargo SCL 4 months ago, it was said that it just missed the release and that you were really close. What the hell happened?
Time is relative. No. So a few things on that. First is, when I said that, first off, I do regret using that exact terminology.
Yes, I bet you do, Chad. I bet you
But,
do.
you know, to be more serious, when I said that, that doesn't mean we're really close to going live, right? So I think that's one thing to consider, is that there's still the whole Avocado PTU live flow that we have to go through, and there's going to be a lead time to getting that out to players, like, no matter what. So it wasn't like we were so close to just like pushing the button and being live. I probably could have been clear on that point, but on top of all that,
He's
there's
apologizing,
a lot of things that
Data,
happen,
chill.
even still, like, you know, in
We're
between
human.
like what we would normally go, you know, to live and doing further development. And in particular,
human.
some things that like
He shouldn't
ended up
use the
being
language, but he said I
especially
shouldn't use the language.
problematic, like going long, was things in particular like ATC and transit. ATC and transit were 2 really critical parts of the whole hangar loop, of course, and the ship loading changes that we did with the ship loading platform. And unfortunately, like, if you could ask me to pick 2 systems to not touch at all, it would be ATC and transit, because there are 2 older systems in the game. They're very complicated. and they have lots of bugs historically. They're problem children for us as systems. So we knew coming into this that it was going to be a risk making changes to those systems. And what turned out to be,
we're left with
think,
Will memes for food code.
more of a problem than we anticipated is that like once we started getting like wider testing, those systems really buckled underneath load in a way that we weren't really seeing.
No, they didn't
internally.
rewrite everything.
So we would,
That's
if
the
anybody
problem.
was on the PTU, for example,
They want to rewrite everything.
Whenever we first started going out,
but this shit keeps getting in the way.
It would be rocky. We put out some fixes, bring in more players, and then the thing would fall over. And as a developer, to make it more frustrating, fall over in a way where not only could we not reproduce it, but our own QA oftentimes couldn't easily reproduce it, or if they could, there wasn't like a coherent understanding about like what the fundamental cause was. So for those kinds of issues, we had to get creative as far as like understanding what was happening and like what to do to address it, because again, like we couldn't really consistently or fully understand it. So we put in a lot of diagnostics, a lot of telemetry, try things, and then eventually work towards a conclusion on what the actual fundamental problems were. On top of that, like I think there was kind of a consideration with those systems about, right, we're going to go in here, we're going to make some big changes. We know we have to in order to make all of this Hanger stuff work. But these are kind of older systems. Do we rewrite them? Do we, largely refactor them, or do we try to keep them largely intact, but with the smaller changes that we need, hopefully smaller changes that we need to get us out?
Well, we know there's a
hit the
transit
release date
refactor
sooner. So we made the call that we were not going to largely refactor or rewrite them for this release. In retrospect, I'm not sure, like if I could do it again, I would be interested to know, would it be longer actually if we just decided to just rewrite them or refactor them first? The good news is that we already are planning on doing just that. And in fact, transit is already in progress with the new version.
See, I know what I'm talking about.
For server matching and all this stuff. So that's good. And then ATC as well, we already have plans on how to rework it and to make it just fundamentally some of the problems at play here, because ATC as a system is so like centralized, and it keeps a lot of state internally in a very centralized place. But these systems are extremely complicated about how they deal with persistence and logging and streaming, and in particular tracking ship allocations in the hangars. So we would get bugs, for example, with like ships doubling up in hangars, etc. Like those things were really challenging the system, as well as like the doors not opening. So like a lot of that stuff, I think we have a lot better idea about what to do about it as a system in the future. But this release, we made the call to try to, take the system that we had, just kind of like, get it working with the new direction,
Band-Aid.
and then hopefully give us some more time without so much time
more
pressure
Band-Aid fixes
to make the right adjustments, like more
we don't
fundamentally.
need that.
It's a risk we took. It didn't turn out, I think, as we hoped, but sometimes that's how it goes. But there was a lot more things than that. Another thing was the mission system. It's a new mission system with a new delivery hookup for the delivery missions. First outing, right? There's a lot of new shaky things that we found with, in particular, the hookup from the freight elevators to the missions. There's just like a lot of loose ends, a lot of things, threads would get lost. We have this whole warehouse system that has to interact with the mission system. And there's just, again, a lot of these like rare low repro issues that in these very fundamental places, actually, this is another point for ATC and transit. Like when you have a moderate inconsistent bug in a system that's not as critical, it doesn't seem as bad. Not to say that, bugs are bad. Of course, we want the game to be stable. But whenever you have something that's like, let's say it happens 1% of the time or 0.1% of the time. Unfortunately, if that isn't a part of the game flow,
a critical system.
Yeah, it's awful. It's unplayable, right? So we have to like take even more care with those systems to get them into a better place so the game is more playable, because those bugs have an outsized effect. But beyond that, there was also, in particular, a lot of issues that we had with networking and serialization and the replication layer changes that were coming in preparation for server meshing. And I can just speak for my own personal experience debugging some of these things. There were some very complicated, hard to understand bugs that we had to work back to eventually being actually corruption in serialized data that was coming from some bugs in the replication layer, which we could not reproduce that again internally. And that was a wild one to figure out. It was very, very confusing, as you can imagine, because it's rare and it's random and like the data you get doesn't make sense. And you're trying to make sense of like how these things come together. But we got there.
I muted in time.
Design and iteration changes, some of them, we were pretty public about, like the item bank, but also tweaks to the freight elevator kiosk, changes to how the economy tuning works, for example, with auto loading times and stuff. So like, and to be fair, we were wanting the patch to be a complete package as much as we could. So given that we were already going late, we didn't entirely shy away from taking some of the time to like also like clean things up on the design side while we're also grappling with some of these harder
they did good with
the
auto loading changes.
And then like the final thing I'll say on it is
mission payouts.
We didn't want the whole schedule to shift.
Rented ships.
So we still have a lot of other goals. One of them obviously was the Atlas, but there's things coming up. 4.0. We're obviously still trying to get
looks like he's going to talk about the Atlas
out the door. And we didn't want to just take everything and just like take everyone, focus entirely on this release, get this release out the door and have our whole schedule change for the whole company. So we had to like, there was a lot of people who needed to move on to 4.0 goals or whatever. And so it meant that we needed to keep like the core people that were working on the mainline features on the release, but we didn't have the full force of the company to just close that one specific patch out. We could have, but like I said, it would have, caused problems for our other goals otherwise. So you kind of in total, there's a lot of things that I feel like I've learned from, and I hope in the future it gives us a better like framework for how to deal with something this complex. And then, one last thing I'll say is I think there's also just a fundamental problem with the whole conceit of having this many fundamental things in one patch,
right?
Where I think if I would do it again, I would slice it differently and try to do the persistent and instance hangars in their own patch first, and then layer on top all this other stuff. We wanted them to come together as an experience. And I understand.
We also want them to do things faster.
That might have been actually kind of a weird thing for the players to go through, to have like this one particular aspect of that feature set come in.
We want patches to be bigger and be better.
But from a development perspective, it would have allowed us to harden on the aspects of it that were in particular thorny and more of an engineering challenge.
It is what it is.
And then get that hardened and
Sonic.
stable so that we give that to the players, and then layer on top of that all this other stuff around it. But doing it all together, I think, really challenged us when some of the
thank you for your prime.
Like I said, some of the risks didn't break in our favor.
Yeah, you bring up several good points, and for those of you in the chat are like, "Wow, if this was an easy question, I hate to see a hard one." I was being facetious. This was the hard one.
Yeah, that was the hard question.
Lots of times when we talk about a tier 0 feature or whatever, it's we do that thing that Chad was talking about. You can basically, for anything, you can basically do one of two courses of action. One, you can split them up into several smaller things, or two, you can try to push out a suite of stuff. And we attempted to do this suite of stuff for all of this. It was originally attached to an even bigger suite of stuff and everything that was 323. When we've done the separation in the past, it's a little more stable and certain stuff, certainly, but that's when you tend to see things like, well, I don't understand why this is like this, and I don't understand like this and like this, and we just have to go, well, that's because we didn't give you the second part and the third part and the fourth part, and when you get the second part and the third part and fourth part, that first part will make more sense. And we try to explain that, but when you play the game and you see 1/4
Yeah.
of an experience,
It's
there's
not us-
just
it's not for us to understand
You're
that.
right when you say this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, because it's 1/4 of this overall
Yeah.
thing. And when you see
That's not up
things
for the
like
player to care.
the persistent hangars now, and where we're going with item placement and the item banks and all this stuff like that, this is still just sections of this thing that we'll continue to build
Deliver the
out later and
feature.
later. And you could expect to hear more about that at a big event that's coming up in a few weeks. How many weeks? Don't tell me.
What was he referencing?
Yeah, so we tried to do this nice package thing, and yeah, you never know when you start these
Citizen,
things.
what
You never
feature?
know whether the package approach is going to be the right one, or the slicing it up into a bunch of different sections is going to be the right one.
More info,
Hindsight's
Sikon, about what?
Always 2020. But yeah,
I talked over it for a second.
It was another learning experience. and
Kiosks?
I really appreciate, and I want to hammer home
item
the part
recovery,
you
probably.
and your team.
Yeah.
Basically, there on an island by yourself, and then yeah, you had help from here and there, but for the most part, the full resources of the company were not there to help you. They all had to stay on other things. They all just to keep the progress on 4.0 going, and the stuff that's beyond going. So it's I appreciate the work you put in, and I think, if I can speak for the community, they all appreciate that you guys.
Yeah,
we started
absolutely.
talking about this. We first talked about this in ISC in October of last year. That's how long.
Yes. And I've been thinking about it a lot longer than that.
Yeah,
too, so.
yeah. Your small team out there in LA and Montreal has been on this for more than a year, and stuff like this. And I hope we all appreciate the folks watching at home. And
We appreciate, but we would
your
appreciate if it
dedication
didn't
of
take a
staying with this
year
and sticking with this and
to do this shit.
getting it resolved,
And maybe
getting as
if they
resolved
didn't
as
have a
you can
small
before the
team.
4.0 the 324 release.
Where's
and
the big
subsequent hot
teams?
fixes after that.
Everyone's got a small team.
All right. What happened with the item drawer change? Let's just get the two big ones out of the way, man.
Yeah.
It'll
Why
be
is everyone's
easier
team
after this.
small?
What
I
happened
mean,
with the item drawer?
to me, it's this one. It's not like a challenging question. It's gone on a bit of an arc, and I don't think that arc is completely finished. What's funny about that arc is we've kind of ended up where we started, actually, because like in my in the original proposal for the item bank, it works like it does now, actually, which is like it's the personal
Interesting.
inventory UI, and really like the item bank is more of like an interaction point to trigger that UI. And the reason to understand why that makes sense is because to think about like what you're doing at the item bank. What you're doing really is we're trying to make it easier to get things that make sense from like a FPS player perspective, right? So if you want to get meta pins, you want to get armor, a weapon, these kinds of smaller items, which are often equipment, we want to make that intuitive and easy and quick, frictionless.
Quick and frictionless.
Personal inventory UI
What
makes
happened?
sense for that because it has the paper doll view where you can pull things over and like kind of very more tangibly interact with the player and more quickly equip and unequip, swap things
happened?
out, etc. However, the personal inventory UI, I think everyone that's played the game knows it's not perfect, and there's things that we have long wanted to do about it. And in fact, for this release, it was one of the things that we hoped that we could get to, but we didn't have the time to. We're still going to come back to making improvements to that UI. So for that reason, we had some internal discussion on iterating on it and looking at it. And after we had gotten the freight elevator kiosk UI to a pretty good place, I think people saw before that we originally had this more 3D based UI on the left-hand side of the freight elevator kiosk, which we may come back to at some point with some rethinking. But when we went to the more like kind of straightforward like grid view, and then added certain things like search and better filtering, that experience started to develop in a way that had some functionality advantages over the personal inventory UI. So we had some discussions internally and decided that we would try moving it over to use just the freight elevator kiosk UI rather than the personal inventory UI. And there was trade-offs, of course. So like some of the like faster, tangible, easier kind of changes.
Yeah, you couldn't shift click, you couldn't double click, you couldn't do anything.
Other things like search and filtering that are better.
I literally had to open a
And
drawer.
after giving it to y'all and collecting a lot of feedback and internally, we had to make a call. It was one of these things where there was very strong voices actually on like kind of both ends of it. So I think no matter what, some people, you know, it actually just went to a Bar Citizen in Seattle.
Were insane.
It's funny. Like I talked to people and it was like someone would say, man, I'm so happy you made that change. And somebody else would be like, why don't you bring back the freight elevator kiosk UI and the item bank? But I think the answer is going to be
visually the freight elevator kiosk was better
like it is now, but bring
functionally
over some of the things from the freight elevator kiosk UI, like the search functionality.
But this community is insane
to make that a better experience
I don't know.
itself. So both of them are, you know, they are better user interfaces and UXs in general.
And yes, folks who are in the chat watching, who've done the math, it is 8 o'clock in the morning for Cargo Chat.
Yes.
He woke up extra early on a Friday morning in order to do this. So be kind. You can talk about how messed up my face is all you want. But let Chad wake up for a little bit. He's doing great. All right, so we got a couple questions here about the hangar itself. So
this is probably going to be
these
the
are the
good
ones
stuff
that we ended up
for me,
going to
I think.
Ian and Rick. These are the design of the physical hangar and the layout and stuff is not typically questions that would work for Chad, you know, as a programmer and engineer.
Yeah, Chad's the
and stuff.
programmer.
But these were important. They were highly voted up. We had access to Rick Porter and Ian, so we went and got the answers for them. So the first question here is: are we going to have more room to park ships and vehicles on the sides of our hangars? The pads are big enough, but the pavement is tiny compared to the rest.
Agreed.
There was that question. There was, are there any plans to add side rooms to players' persistent hangars for things such as HABs, firing range, repair and modification facilities, or even just a large room with a cargo grid where players can customize, as they see fit?
Let me customize.
Can you get rid of the garage in our hangars so we can just set up our furniture better? Too many random cables and boxes lying around. Can you clean up all that garbage that's along the sides? I'm merging all these together because the answer to all of these are sort of the same thing.
Yeah.
These are the very first. Okay, well, I need to rephrase that.
Yes, you do.
From a player perspective, which is you. I think these are probably we were trying to figure out before the show whether these are the fourth version or the fifth versions of hangars that you've seen. There were two versions made by our partners at Behavior way back in the early days, and then we attempted a first version, which is what you had before, and then there's this. So this is, I think this is the second version the CIG has made. This is the fourth version of hangars and stuff that you guys have seen. And not all of the features, not all of the intention that we wanted to get in there is in there. I'm going to read these notes from directly from Ian and Rick here. So these are just their words.
No paraphrasing.
We plan to add garage modules. So we don't intend to expand the pavement, but there should be more room for vehicles when you could basically add on modules and expand the hangars to the left and right and to the front and back and there's different sections.
What about
the plan is for personal hangars to be able to be customized and expanded in the future with the addition of these hangar modules. The exact list of modules are still being defined at this point, which so I'm not going to be able to give you a
modules
list
are going to be this 100%
or something like
100%.
that. But you will be able to modify your hangars to certain extents and expand them out in other directions and stuff so that you can bring vehicles out and kind of store them off to the side. And you don't have to use the ship elevator for bringing all your ground vehicles and stuff, or just your smaller fighters and stuff off to the side. And as far as cleaning up the garbage around the end, we've already done multiple passes for the base hangar OCs. So we're listening to the community and moving in the right direction. That's Ian speaking there. We want to split the data for instance hangars and personal hangars separately so that we can completely remove everything in the personal hangars while still leaving some form of dressing and world building in the instance hangars. So what this means is that, as we've talked about before, you have your home location, and then you have the instance hangars that you'll get at every other location when you go there.
So do I.
Right now, those are using the same OC. So when you remove the dressing from one, you remove the dressing from all of them. We want to split those into two different object containers so that the instance hangars that you get
remove
at every
them?
other space station or whatever, those can
Remove
stay
them.
dressed and look good.
And when you
but
have
your
time in
personal
5
hangars,
years,
the ones that get assigned to you at your home
then
location,
make it
when you
look
log in,
pretty.
those will be completely empty, and you'll be able to decorate those to your heart's content.
Right.
That is our intention there. No timeline on when that's going to come.
Yeah, remove them for now.
And then, yeah, as far
Nobody
as
cares what they look like.
That was it. Oh, and then I'm sorry, one more question on that. You're just going to listen to me for a little bit, because these are answers from Ian and Rick, so I'm going to give Chad a little break since Chad did really good in those first two questions. The freight elevators are positioned a bit awkwardly in the hangars for loading and unloading in relation to the ship pad.
Horrifically.
A lot of the hangar ramps are in the back, and the freight
It's in
elevators
the
off to
opposite
side.
side of where it should be.
Has the team considered moving the elevator to accommodate these? This goes back to the same hangar modules. So of the hangar modules will also be where you place the freight elevator and stuff. So basically when the customization comes in, we anticipate you being able to move the freight elevator to wherever you
Horrible
need it for
answer.
your particular ship.
Just fix it for the
Then
meantime.
the last one in this
All you do is
bunch of
rotate.
questions here that were not
Just
necessarily
rotate.
for Chad, but
What you had
were
before.
really important that we wanted to get answers to. Are there plans for the station cargo decks to play a role in cargo hauling and logistics gameplay? Folks might remember we added cargo decks to space stations 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Longer than that,
No, it's
brother.
about- these need a significant rework. They were built with an intention and a design philosophy that existed back then. We've since evolved our thinking on how these things should work. So they will need to basically a rework to incorporate them into the current version of cargo gameplay that Chad and his team have created, have gone out in 3 of 24, and will continue to iterate in subsequent patches. So yes, there are plans. We can't tell you what they are just yet because they're still at a point where they're too likely to change between now and the time where they're implemented.
Okay.
But when we get closer to a better understanding of how those are going to be implemented, we will share that information.
So for now, it's where you buy a box and rent a ship, maybe, and that's all it is.
Me speaking for Ian and Rick Porter.
Guys, about the
portion
placement of the
RCL.
freight
Chad,
elevator.
did you enjoy your break?
If you put the
enjoyed
elevator
it.
on where
Thank
you
you.
spawn your ship area and
Back
made it a
to
freight
Chad.
elevator and rotated,
the
just
Atlas.
swap them, you're
Which is
perfect.
the new hotness that's been revealed over the last week.
they won't do
PTU, has a magnificent tractor beam that is making every other tractor beam look like
Dog shit.
turd sandwich
Yeah.
from a can. Will you implement a mode switch for tractor beams to give functionality like the Atlas has to the multi-tool or dedicated tractor beams so that there's more parity between the three? Or is
would
this
be
something
nice.
that's exclusively to the Atlas?
For the moment, it's exclusive to the Atlas.
Of course,
there
until it's
is
done
some
being
discussion
sold.
internally about like maybe doing that. Nothing confirmed. I feel like that there's
gotta wait for the
some
sale to
benefit
confirm it,
having
guys.
having there be some diversity in the cinematic universe of tractor
No.
beaming as sort of
No.
like functionality.
No.
To differentiate
Diversity and
the advantages
horrible
disadvantages of
experiences?
certain things. For the moment, we're leaving it as is, but that could change.
Good experience.
I think
experience.
as we've illustrated, that can change with feedback, and as we get more experience and we do more analytics, we see how people are using it. There will always be some distinction, though. You want the handheld for boxes of this size, and the larger weapons for the medium boxes, and the Atlas for the larger box. Atlas and the ship tractor beams for the larger boxes.
Like, this is so obvious.
But yeah, when he says no plans right now, that's what that means. No plans right now. But if you followed
Could
Star
change
Citizen
next week.
if you
right?
followed Star Citizen for any
Yeah.
period of
I mean,
time,
look at the item bank, right? Like we take feedback seriously. So
Yeah, I think this is gonna
we'll figure out
change.
what makes sense for the game, and
I think
but, like,
everybody
my
wants
understanding as far as like what
the
we're doing
current
right
tractor
now with
beam
all this is
to be
it's
an
just gonna
option?
the way that it is.
yeah. So that's Cargo
But
Chad and me
are
saying,
very interested in
make
what the
your
Atlas
points,
can do, right?
Share
So
your
just do
point
the
of
right
view.
thing, CIG.
Make your
all.
solid, considered arguments, not just the pitchfork stuff. Our history is replete with dozens and dozens of examples where we've heard what you said and adjusted these things. So if you feel strongly about it, continue to feel strongly about it. Continue to share that, and we'll see what the plan is later. Will we be, so in the SitCon goodie pack, by the way, there's a SitCon goodie pack. I think it might be available now. I don't know. I'm not in that part of marketing, so I don't know. But I think, but in the CityCon goodie pack, there were beds.
Oh, that confirms that
beds?
it's being sold. Yep. That's
In the goodie
100%
pack?
confirmed.
This question is asking if we'll be able to log in or out of our hangars moving forward with these beds that are in the CityCon pack.
When you get it, I don't
Yeah, I don't think it's on the store. Not until .1 is live, most likely.
I'll say this. We plan on, and as I've said before about bed logging, we're definitely going to work
Atlas?
more on bed logging, and we're going to work
I'm talking
more
about the
on
Atlas.
logging in and out. And one of the things in particular that we're going to work on is logging in and out of hangars specifically. We want to support that. That's something that we've already been working on to some extent on the technical side, but there's still more work to go there.
I like that. But
I don't want to say that when you get this particular thing, a certain feature is going to be supported in the next release, though.
I still feel
like as far as that goes, like I don't plan on that.
I like it. I like it. I like
it. But logging in and out of hangars and
if I could pause, I would explain myself more.
Be developed further is what I'll say.
You said a lot of words. I want to get this.
I want my hangar to be my home for my ships.
You're telling us that at
not
some
for my
point,
character.
I'm saying the next release, but at some point you will be able to log in and out from your hangars.
Yes, 100%. That's definitely a thing that we're going to support.
Because my least favorite thing in the world is having to wake up in the hab and go to the hangar. So that would be lovely. Thank you, Chad.
Yes.
That's not my least favorite thing in the world. David's my least favorite thing in the world. He just did a Yelp. It was like a 1950s like a scream queen.
Poor David.
What work is being done to stop our hangar deco from bouncing around
PC's
so
question.
We can make our hangars the way they are shown in ISC? We actually answered this last week with Benoit. That's here because I want to refer people back to Benoit. Basically, it is not a feature issue. It is a matter of physics. Physics is one of the largest performance hits to the server. So that is basically it, trying to negotiate the physics of all those items placed on other items. As server performance improves, as server meshing provides us the benefits to server performance that we hope it will, and so that problem will become less and less severe as it is, and then we'll be able to go in and find the individual edge cases that cause it here and there and there. But basically, it's one of those things. It's literally one of those things where it works on my computer, and then you put it up on a server with 100 people, and it starts flopping around, which is why it looks one way on ISC and it looks another way in live. We show the intention of the feature and how it's supposed to work, and it is basically a performance-related
and then you play it.
That's causing it in the servers. Cool. Right now. So as we continue to optimize, we continue to improve performance, that will resolve most of those issues.
It sounds like let's see what happens with meshing, and then we'll fix any other problems with it, is what Jared said. So it is what it is. You can't do anything about it.
In the 324 PTU, you were originally able to add one SCU cargo mission boxes into larger 8 SCU boxes for transport. That was really nice, by the way. This has since been removed since launch. I hate you, Chad. Any plans to bring this back?
That's a good question.
The answer has to be yes.
There were some issues on the delivery side. We needed more sophisticated logic to handle the freight elevator delivering nested contents for delivery. So we rolled that back because we were having some issues having that work like consistently. But it is a thing that like we've talked about with the mission team, and I think
sounds like they want to do it.
Probably bring it back, but for the moment, it's more of just it's one of the things we had to like give up on in order to get the release out the door.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I want there to be a way to just consolidate
in live
into a larger box.
We call our ships while we are in a party member's hangar. Our ships spawn in our personal hangar instead of the party member's hangar. Will that change?
Stuff was disappearing, yes. It happened to me.
For sure. This is another one of those things where we had to, make some calls as far as like what we were going to try to deliver on this release. And if people saw like the very early, actually, I'm not sure this part of it got to Avocado or not, but at one point we actually had a drop down where you could pick on the freight elevator kiosk a party member, and
we never saw that,
choose their inventory there. So we were trying to like really integrate party members into that hangar experience, But
Unfortunately,
on both
that would have been
these,
sick.
where we ended up is needing to remove it, just again, get the release done. But also, I think we realized that there's like some more design considerations around the experience of security and permissions, and party membership isn't always the right fit to answer some
No,
of those questions anyways.
100%.
So there's definitely
We need a
some
system
design
for
work to
this.
do there, as far as like the
Yes.
experience and how you attribute or revoke certain kind of rights in your hangar or to other players. But we do want to allow that general kind of flow where you can have your friends there that you're playing with, be it in a
What was the
party
question?
or in a group or an org or
Why
whatever,
when I spawn my
and
ship
then
in
have
somebody
a
else's
way to
hangar,
spawn
it
your ship
spawns
in
in
there.
mine.
Additionally, the ATC did not really support this pattern very well, and it's because the ATC is an old system that was originally written with Port Olisar in mind, and just some landing pads of Port Olisar. That was the original implementation of ATC. So this whole idea of like even hangars is kind of alien to that system, let alone that multiple people could be in a hangar. And we've kind of had to build that into it, but it has some fundamental concepts,
Guys,
like
this
thing
is
called
what that video
permission
was about.
token, that
Why
don't
is
really
CIG
make
late on
sense
everything?
in that world, which is why we're reworking some of the implementations to essentially,
This is
actually, this is
why.
kind of getting at like one of the core things that we're going to do is separate out from ATC hangar management as a concept. And ATC is going to become a simpler system that all it deals with is requests to land and exit. And so it's really just governing the entryways
Nice.
to the hangars, and that's it. And then have a separate system for hangar management for ships and all that. And included in that can be the idea of like, how do you handle different situations and corner cases around
Cool.
multiple
That's smart.
ships, including multiple ships from multiple players.
So one can break and the other one can still work.
How much do you
Good
hate
answer.
ATC now? Can be real.
It knows what it did.
It's the priority of we need to continue pushing
I'm pretty
patches.
Sure that, ATC
that
has
gets
been
in the way of
a part
everything.
of the PU since it was first introduced in late November, early December 2015.
Because every other company
it
would
is
just
when you
rewrite
say,
it.
oh, it's an old system, it is literally the oldest system of the PU. I'm not entirely certain even the folks who made it originally are even still with the project at this point.
They're not.
Yeah, they're not. So it's like what we say with the old MFDs and stuff. It was good for its time and it served its thing for its time. But I think everybody is in agreement, both player and developer alike at this point, that we need a new, more robust service to replace it.
Yeah. And to be fair to that system, like it wasn't really designed with this in mind, right? So we've been pushing it, but we just have to break it at this point. Better. We need to be more ambitious for their breaking of it.
Yeah. I'm realizing this is probably not the kind of conversation you'd see it in the promotional material for any other game development. Are they like talking about how much they hate a game feature? I'm like, yeah. We recognize the same thing you do. We're all in the same boat.
So happy they're cool and different.
Right now, so that is being spec'd out, and that work is being assigned out.
Very weird flex.
There's no ETA on it because, like I said, it's still early days and that stuff. But
do what's best for the game. That would be a flex.
I'm not gonna sit. I can't sit here and pretend like it's the greatest thing ever. I hate it.
No, I mean, every time I see a report of players saying or QA finding like a door not opening, I feel it in my bones.
Yeah. Yeah, what was it? Rhino Separath 1972 says, ATC has stolen millions from me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
And everybody.
Honestly, we should just, I hope there's like a
It's the
permanent
only
prison
money
in
sink.
Kleishner once we replace it, and we just name him ATC, and he's just like, I used to do good. We were talking about vehicle spawning in different hangars. Is spawning vehicles from the cargo elevator still planned? I think we mentioned it in one of those early ISCs and whatever.
All right, here's that answer
We haven't heard much about it since it was removed.
Absolutely. It's still a thing that we want to do. Now that we've had a bit more time, I think we're also considering that experience a little bit more as far as like how that works, and also potentially supporting things like the Atlas. But definitely it's a thing that's going to come. Yeah, it's definitely coming.
Okay. Can we have an option
Do not come.
to remove or disable the alarm in the hangar every
Yes.
time a ship is
Oh
called?
my God.
I don't know about that. It's not a thing that we've talked about, or I've heard even feedback on. But one thing I'll say is we are looking at ways to make it faster, that whole loop, because we want to make getting ships like a quicker experience. Like I think at this point people have enjoyed the pomp and circumstance of getting these ships. It's a really cool thing when you do it. But of course, with anything, you know, you do it enough times, and
Once.
Yes.
You kind of just
One
want to get your
time.
ship, right?
That's it.
So we're looking at potentially some ways where, you know, you're getting, let's say like a Titan or something like out of an XL hangar. You know, it feels kind of absurd, like
It is absurd.
the giant experience that unfolds for you over the period of time it takes.
Right.
So we're looking at, for example, maybe we can like preset the loading platform height, or maybe adjust some timings to make
Okay.
it faster, so you don't have to wait quite as long, but without changing some of the fundamental elements of that
Okay.
experience. We still want it to feel big and important, and you know, have that pomp and circumstance, have it feel somewhat epic, but where it makes sense, have the ability to like have that time not as
It's
long.
just, why
for the
is
smaller
visual
requests.
over game?
I don't know that
always.
we'll
It's ridiculous,
outright disable the sound there.
Well,
Can we
Again,
lower
if there's
the
lots of
sound?
feedback on that point, maybe
It's so
I
loud.
want to make a suggestion. Some of the best things in Star Citizen came from my ideas. That's not true. Eventually, we have to make some kind of, you mentioned it before, some kind of hangar manager, a thing, you know, especially when they start adding the customizable rooms and stuff like this. In the hangar manager, there should be like
So many cop outs.
couple of
I think he
default
doesn't get the decision
ringtones
on that.
listed in there, just like when you get a
Right?
new Motorola phone or whatever.
The
you just set
the
so that
pomp
you can
and
change
circumstance
the
is not up to
alarm sound.
Chad.
It can, the alarm sound can
Somebody's
sound like
saying that's how it has to
like a
be.
French police car or whatever. You just different sounds so that people can change it up every once in a while.
Okay, we'll take that into consideration. Thank you.
I don't think he's really going to take that into consideration, Chat. I think Chat's shining me on. All right, so a lot of this is focused on hangars and stuff like this. There is a
No, let's go.
series of vehicles that are kind of out there on the left there, the whole series. Talk to us about what the end goal for this. What is the experience loading and unloading a whole series ship supposed to be like?
I'm interested.
Well, I mean, it's obviously what we have now is I would say tier 0 implementation.
Hoop.
We wanted to get something in for the hulls that was unique, because it's a unique ship in the game. It, you know, can't land with the spindles extended, and it's big, it's epic, and we wanted the cargo loading for this ship and the series beyond that to feel like it made sense for the cargo trading at that scale, and in particular have that visual be like something that was like compelling. And so we wanted to make that cargo loading in and out like feel like something that was like physically like building up and reducing on the ship. However, obviously, it's, you know, just doing this like popping in thing, and then also it doesn't support any manual loading. So in
Because
the
we all
nearer
want to
term,
manually load.
we
yes.
are looking at adding support for manual loading for the whole series, and
Pyro, they're going to have it, they said.
ship that might need to dock for cargo support. And I'm not going to say like any particular release or anything, but like absolutely
4.0.
we're looking at
They've already said it.
bolstering the support for those ships.
He just doesn't know. Thank you, Killafuse.
Creating the support for those for manual loading at those loading areas on the exterior of the stations, and actually adding to them.
They already said pyro
having
stations,
potentially
exteriors, they're going to
multiple.
have it.
We're considering different ways to make the throughput
We'll see in
on that
Stanton.
system make sense. both to allow for multiplayer and ships using tractor beams to help optimize that loading time. And I think that will be a really big, like, meaningful change. Beyond that, obviously,
Agreed,
we
Jazz,
still
yeah.
plan on doing a better implementation of the automatic loading for the whole series, be it NPCs or drones. I think that probably is going to be later because it's more of like a visual experience and less of like a gameplay experience, whereas like the manual
Yeah, we
loading
don't
would
need
be a
that
really
now.
big, meaningful change from like the actual in-game experience for the players. So that's what we have now.
Bluesmink, you're asking a question about the missions. That's a question for the mission team, not for Chad. Where was that? H Lander 1337 says, "Is this the SCL Live that announces Pyro is coming out?" Yes, Pyro is coming out eventually when it's ready. You heard it here and everywhere else. What's the current status of hover trolleys? Are there still plans to give players this or another method to move multiple cargo boxes around locations at once?
Yes. So hover trolleys, another thing that was sacrificed to the release gods. In
Who
particular, the hover
cares?
trolleys have some new physics around their behavior, and they were being pretty wonky, I'll put it like that, as far as the actual like attachment onto
They were
the
causing tons of crashes, I think,
onto
in
the hover
Evo.
trolley, not with the attachment, but how the hovering dealt with it. So like you would suddenly have this attachment and like the thing would kind of like sway around and sometimes like violently flip over or something.
Yeah, we have the
So there's
Atlas
some
now.
physics issues with it that need to get sorted. And also there's some questions about quite how to integrate it into the game loop as far as, you know, how you get them, or you know, is that something that you buy, or can you find them in the world, et cetera, et cetera. So
I just
we
want a
took a
way
step
to
back from
connect
that
small
to focus on
boxes
getting the
together
release
to
out the
make them a
door,
large
but
box.
it's not forgotten. They are going to come back
I don't need to
once we've
push
kind
it,
of smoothed out
but a pallet would be great,
implementation and like the physics problems,
right?
and then also pin down exactly like how
For
we
S
want players
for
to
one
use them
SCUs
and where they are in the
is
game.
a pallet that
So
is
yeah,
now a 4
still
SCU.
coming.
8
I
is
will,
a pallet
to
that is
kind
8
of,
SCU.
I will say there
Right?
are, beyond the hover trolleys, there are other things in addition that we're always looking at as far as like figuring out how to make the game loop for moving cargo better. And certainly I think in mass is certainly like a thing that now that we have manual loading in the game, we have more experience with it. It's clearly like there's like this interesting point where if you're not dealing with the largest boxes in the game, some like combinations of medium to small boxes can be cumbersome. So
Yeah.
it's definitely like a thing that we're aware of, and there's, I think, going to be continued
Like you do the
design
work to put them
consideration,
together, and
on
that's
the
manual.
New things like
but then
the
you move
upcoming
them all
Atlas,
together would be nice.
which is coming in 3.24.1, which is in testing on the PTU.
It might be live
There were
today.
a bunch of people asking me how much the pledge will cost. I don't know. I'm not in those meetings.
But we know that it's going to be a pledge, which is a bummer.
We've been talking a lot
It
about
shouldn't be.
manual loading. This says, how will paying a fee to auto load our cargo work? Isn't that?
I'm not sure I understand, because like
Yeah.
you
They're
pay a
talking
fee to
about
auto load
missions,
now.
guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a weird question. I thought that's pretty much the thing. We'll skip ahead. Hey, we'll get out a little.
I mean, I can maybe I can answer a question they didn't ask,
Sure.
which is auto loading always going to work the way that it does now?
Sure.
The answer is we're gonna
There.
build on that. Right now, auto loading is built into the commodity trading experience, in part because that was the quickest way that we could do it. I think we'll always want to have that because it's convenient in order to just make those decisions when you're doing trading.
I put ... at the end of
However,
everything
there are
for
times
some
when
reason.
it would be convenient to auto load things.
I don't know
that
why.
aren't
Is it rude?
necessarily part of a transaction or after a transaction.
Like mission cargo can't be auto loaded. Right?
Mission
Yeah?
cargo, but also
It's
items
not
in general
intended to be
that you
rude.
have. Maybe you want to load those into the ship. And so a full auto loading experience is a feature that we're currently looking at, as far as making it to where you can just have
Gotcha.
full sets
It
of
was not
stuff.
meant to be negative.
If you just don't want to touch the freight elevator, right? You just like don't like it, that's fine. we're looking at having an experience for you to where you can say like, okay, I want this arrangement of stuff, and as long as it fits into the cargo grids on the ship, then it'll move them around. And now that we've made it to where the cargo grids support so many different items, that means that there's a lot more opportunity to make that work. Of course, there'll be a small fee associated with it, but it will, I think, support. It's kind of a bigger solution to, instead of just like solving it specifically for mission items. It's something that you can do more generally. And then also, we talked about small vehicles, right? Ground vehicles, getting those into your ship. Well, that would be a solution, right? To, if
Very
you wanted
interesting.
to drive it out yourself.
No, not just spawning a ground vehicle in the cargo, but spawning a ground vehicle in a cargo crate. That can then.
Well, I'm saying like you could have the ship
Load a
stowed,
vehicle.
and then request to have the vehicle loaded into, like, the ground vehicle
nice.
loaded into your vehicle.
That's pretty cool.
Okay. Will the search bar accept actual item names in the future and not just the internal identifier?
Right now, I mean, it's using the what we call the lock string. So I mean, it does, but there's the problem is there's various kinds of data associated with these items that are in different places, and what we haven't done is really built that out. But like, it does use the localized item name. But there are other kinds of fields and stuff that it could be built out. In fact, one of the bugs that we had when we first added it is that it was just using the lock name and not the localized name, and it would make
All
it
the
really
nerds in
confusing
chat are
because some things
going
are
nuts
really
over
close
this
to
answer.
the actual end string, and some things just aren't at all. And you would search for certain stuff, and it wouldn't find them. And
You
the reason
mean
is 'cause
he's
it was
not
searching the lock
databasing
ID, but not
correctly?
the localized name, but that's not the case anymore.
Unbelievable.
But there are other kinds of fields that it's not searching on, and sometimes I think to make that a little bit confusing,
I don't know.
sometimes
Yeah,
there's
I'm sure
different
it's
strings
basic
shown in
shit, but
different
it's funny.
UIs. So like, for example, the shop UI might use like a different string for the purchasable display from like the item ports editing and stuff like that. So more to be done, but it is using the localized name.
There's a localized name and a lock name.
Lock ID. So like the localized name is like if you're playing, in a certain localization on the client.
You see the English version or the Spanish version, or whatever.
Exactly.
Is lock ID, is lock and lock ID short for localization?
Yes. So that's sorry, this is some
So there's a localization and a lock ID, which is also short for localization?
Yes, but like the way to think of it is like a lock ID is a single identifier for something that will be localized, right? So we have to have some hook, some way to reference a string that has a variation for all the different languages. So that hook, that identifier, is what we call a lock ID.
Gotcha.
So it might be like if I have like a mug, right?
The mug, that's the mug.
Mug black one jellyfish, because there's a jellyfish on it, right? But then the actual localized string that the players
That's the mug in the forest.
Would, some
jellyfish mug.
Yeah, jellyfish mug. But then, you'd have a different one in German, a different in Spanish, et cetera, et cetera. So that lock ID is what in code and just like the systems normally pass around, because it's something that's understood both by the server and the client. And if you change your localization at runtime, it's something that it's consistent. It's also it's a reference. It's not like a unstructured data as a string. I could go on more, but yeah, so that's basically it, which is just more of an identifier that then gets localized. However, when you search, you want to search on the localized version. And that means that on the client needs to say, when we do a search, here's the lock ID, but here's the locale, here's the localization that you're going to use. And then on the back end, it needs to use that for the string parsing. And we actually have a different database that it searches on that has a different localization on.
I don't think I'm too dumb for this. I'm just
that's the only way that
I'm bored.
You can make it work. You have to have you search on different partitions of the data based on the localization.
I get you. Sometimes I ask questions for the community, sometimes I ask questions for me. That was a question for me. And now I have to go fight Jens Lind. That's unfortunate. Um, there are many items that do not work particularly well on the freight elevators. For example, mining bags. What's being done to resolve those?
Nothing.
Great question. Unfortunately, another thing that got cut. This one's in particular, it hurt me because I made the packing and the attachment behavior, and the system, the packing and arrangement works, but there's one bug I'll get to in a second that didn't. And
It attaches
unfortunately,
at the
because
top, not in the bottom.
most of the items work, another thing that was sacrificed to the release gods, which
This
hurts
one
me
doesn't
'cause
matter for this patch, though. To be
I
fair,
want it to be good because I like to be proud of my work. But the issue in particular with those, if you allow me to get a little bit technical for a moment, is the pivot. So for things like cargo boxes, the pivot is on the bottom in the center.
yeah, this one's at the
And
top.
whenever I
Why?
originally wrote the packing system way back for the whole C, the only thing that we were putting into the cargo grades at that time were the cargo boxes. I knew that more things were coming, so the packing system itself can expect any kinds of dimensions and handles multiple orientations, but the pivot was something that I just didn't have time to generalize. I had to just essentially kind of like hard code it to expect the pivot in a certain place on the
Because
item.
it's attached to the top of the prospector and mold.
And
Yeah, probably.
the technical challenge there is you
Yep.
might say, well, I'm holding the item. How do you not know where the pivot is? The problem is when you're doing things like calling stuff up from a freight elevator, you don't have the item. The entity
Good
isn't
point.
spawned. You don't have the geometry for it. You can't directly access the pivot. So you have to have some way to know where it would be without loading like the skeleton and deriving it, which would be incredibly slow. So what we have to do is like essentially like kind of bake that data out into a data set that could be read from an asynchronous persistence query or based on the class data. So that's the work to be done here. It won't take too long, and it's possible it comes in, very, very soon. But that's essentially it. Is like the reason is
I'm surprised
the
it's not
mining
in the
bags and
dot
these
one.
things, their pivots are in a different place than most of the other items in the game. And the system isn't yet expecting that the pivot might be somewhere else than where most of the other items pivots are.
Nice, DJ.
And for that reason, the way that
I'm in.
it rotates around and the way that it orients itself on the cargo grid is just wrong for that particular thing, which particularly for the mining bags suck because they're situated in a way that actually puts them through the freight
they just fall
elevator.
through
And
the
sometimes
elevator.
when you detach, they actually drop down, which is awful. So like definitely aware of it. But yeah, fix is going to be forthcoming.
It also doesn't matter because you can't sell from
you
the
need
freight
to.
elevator, right?
So
So it's
last
like,
two questions, Chad. You're almost at the end.
if they didn't
and
put
then
it
you
in the dot
go and
zero,
start
like
your
it's
day proper.
understandable because you just mine normally.
Will we
now.
be able to spawn multiple ships at once in the same hangar?
There you go. I saw you asking that. I knew it
Yes.
would get asked. He said yes.
Got any more?
He said yes.
How do we envision
said yes.
that working?
So yeah, I mean, definitely it's a thing that we're looking at on the design side. And so I don't want to give like complete answers because that's
cares?
something that
Who
might
cares?
change a little bit. But in
Just
short,
do it.
we want it to be to where you can spawn multiple ships, especially in these XL hangars where you have these huge
Yes to multiple ships on a
platforms,
single
and
pad
certainly you
or
have the
platform.
room. There's just some thought that has to go into all these different permutations. Let's say you have a ship on the platform and you want to get another ship. Right now, the way the system works is if you get a different ship, we're going to sell the first one. But you don't always want to do that. How as a player do you express that, or how do you understand that what's going to happen? Do you have any control
great
over
news.
the arrangement of it, et cetera, et cetera? So those are things that are getting like pinned down on the design side.
It's not rich people. It's orgs.
But the
Think
goal
about
itself
orgs and
that
parties.
we want to be able to spawn
Think about
multiple
that.
and
It's got
give
nothing to do with
players
wealthy
more
people.
Control over that is something that we're going to do.
It's about playing as a group.
And last question is, have you ever considered the ability to name our cargo boxes so that we'll know what was in them when we move stuff around?
Yeah, they've talked about that.
Yes. Another thing that is on the design side, we're still working on. I remember talking about this like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, he did.
About like how we could handle this. Because
I think it was a
before
question
this
asked
release,
a
we
while
added
ago.
the inventory containers at the end of last year, but we were working on it, before then, especially on the design side. So this is something that we've known about for some time, and those boxes all look the same. So if you have lots of different boxes, how do you know what's in them? And we've had lots of ideas so far as tenting and labeling and naming, et cetera, et cetera. And then also potentially wanting that to be something that you could maybe search on in the freight elevator kiosk, right? I'm not going to commit to one particular solution there because, as I said, there's still some design work that needs to be done to like make the final call about like how that's going to work, and then we
Yeah,
do
I'm
the
glad they
actual
considered this for
implementation.
sure.
But it is a thing that we want to address for sure.
Because even as a player,
Well, Chad,
without a large ship, you
you did
might
it.
want an XL hangar
How do you
because
feel?
you might want to spawn
Feels
5
great.
prospectors that you go mining with
Definitely
your
feels
friends.
great
Right?
now that the release
It's not just
is
a, I
out.
have an 890 jump
Point
hanger,
one
right?
is coming soon. I think that there's a lot of good things coming. I also want to just thank all the players for working with us on this release. I know, especially whenever it originally came out, it was like pretty rocky. There was some real surprises that happened when
Just
we
a
went
little
from
rocky.
PTU to live. We tried real hard to go from that state to something that's more playable. And I think point one is going to be an even bigger jump there. So just
I
want to
think
thank
dot
everyone for
zero
having
is
so
pretty
much
playable
fun
on the cargo
and
side.
helping us with this release. It's been a big push.
But I might just be used to Evo because it was so fucking bad.
Well, thank you, Chad. That was Chad McKinney.
That was a good show.
Remember what his
Better than I
title,
thought it would
title,
be.
Chad?
Senior lead gameplay.
Senior lead gameplay engineer. He and his team been in the cargo trenches for more than the last year. So thank you for taking the time. This will probably be the last show. We've done 6 or 7 shows on cargo and hangars in this just for this release. So this will probably be the last one. We'll see you for whatever the next thing is. Take care, Chad.
Yep.
You can leave. I got to do some housekeeping. I got to do some housekeeping stuff. So, folks, that's it. That's the show.
Okay.
This is probably going to be the last SCL for a while. There won't be an SCL next week. That if you've noticed or if you joined late in the show, you've seen this absolute horror show right here. I'll be down getting my face scan next Friday to do that. And so
Guys,
there's no
new
show next
patches
week.
out.
And then we're into the big
Hiatus
CitizenCon
time.
hustle there. We've only got 1 episode of ISC left. That'll be last week, and then ISC will go on hiatus until after CitizenCon. So there might be an SCL or 1 or 2 that we squeeze in there every once in a while, depending on availability and stuff like this.
In the end, what the fuck are they going to talk about anyway?
We're here at the threshold of a hiatus. So thank you for watching. I do have a couple announcements, though. There are multiple occasions coming up where you can meet CIG folks in person. This is always the biggest and most social time of year here. So TwitchCon in San Diego is next week. There is a Bar Citizen on Friday, September 20th at 6 p.m. at the Garage Kitchen and Bar. There's a comm link on the website, the Bar Citizen World Tour. You can get the specific information, but that is next Friday, where you'll be able to meet some staff that are down there visiting for TwitchCon. There is also, in about a month's time, there is Bar Citizen Week here and around. Basically, Bar Citizens all week long in celebration of CitizenCon. They're happening in cities and locations all around the world. You can check out the Bar Citizen
They haven't done one in Florida for a while.
Website or barcit.io/2952. He didn't think I was going to read that, but I read that. I read a URL because I was born in the 70s.
says, please don't talk to me. Thumbs up.
Yeah. So you can find all kinds of new Bar Citizens that are happening all week, the week of CitizenCon in areas that may or may not be close to you. And then the last one, Atmo Esports, our old friends there, are throwing a major event, the largest event that they've ever thrown, right next door. Literally on the other, there's a wall here, and then there's a wall there, and then there's a building where this event happens. The biggest event, it's a huge venue with actual theater-style scenes, the largest esports thing that they've done there. That is called Enter Atmosphere. You can check out the Atmo Esports website for that. I think it's atmo.sc. There's also going to be a sizable CIG contingent that are visiting there. That takes place the Sunday after CitizenCon.
Okay.
the Sunday, the second day of CitizenCon, but after CitizenCon ends. So it's like the unofficial post party there. Chris Roberts
essentially a
will be there,
CitizenCon event,
as well as a bunch of other people. There's a big social area with a bar and stuff, and they'll be hanging out there to meet people and to converse with people and stuff like that, and to sign autographs, take pictures, all that stuff like that. So it's your chance to meet Chris Roberts and a whole bunch of folks. That is not a Star Citizen event. It is our friends at Atmo Esports, but we're going to hang out with them because we like them a lot. So that's your chance. If you're interested and you haven't picked up tickets for that, you can check that out on their website. As far as how much or whatever, I don't know. I just get the details for where it is. And if I'm not entirely dead after 2 solid days of running CitizenCon, I'll probably be there too. If anybody's seen, anybody who remembers me at the after party for CitizenCon last year, I will be on zombie mode. So just be gentle with me, approach me slowly, indirect eyesight, don't come at me from the sides or behind because I'll spook easily. I will not know where I am, but I will be there, along with all kinds of other CIG staff. So that's the housekeeping. Thanks for watching. Yeah, that's all I got.
Is it really only 35 days till SitCon?
Sorry for this.
All right. I thought that was a decent episode. We got a decent amount of questions answered, and we also got a lot of I think a lot of understanding of why things take so long. All right. The funding model is put out patches and all that, and here we are. Right? So funding model is to put out a patch, and that's what they did. And that patch got in the way of reworks that could have made the game better a lot faster. So it's the choices they're making and the bed they're sleeping in, I guess, and it is what it is, but that's where we are. So that was SCL. I think the end was the best part. I think we got a lot of like good answers and a lot of positive things. The beginning was the tough part where we had to hear about why things went wrong. So I don't know. I came out of that feeling a little bit better than I thought I would, and that's a good thing. I think they got the right head on their shoulder as far as design stuff, and maybe a bit of the wrong head on their shoulders in terms of prioritizing stuff, which is unfortunate. But yeah, that was SCL pretty good. And I guess no SCLs for a while.